Welcome to day 14 of the Democrat government shutdown.
Consistent with their failed policies.
Pass the bipartisan clean funding bill that the House approved weeks ago.
All we say to Donald Trump is, do your job.
Welcome to day 14 of the Democrat government shutdown. It's 2 weeks of Democrats in Congress inflicting untold pain on the American people for nothing other than pure politics, as we've explained at this podium every day of the shutdown. Today, Senate Democrats will have their 8th chance to end this mess by passing our clean, nonpartisan continuing resolution, the government funding bill that would end all of this immediately. Over 3 weeks ago, the House passed that bill, and you all know the details of it. It is completely clean. There are no policy changes, no partisan riders, no gimmicks or tricks at all. All it does is keep the lights on at the current funding levels for a few extra weeks while we complete the normal appropriations process. Now compare that to the Democrats' counterproposal. They're demanding $1.5 trillion in new spending paid for by American taxpayers. And I want you to be specific. I want us to be specific. I want you to note what that counterproposal includes, because we've not yet gone into all the details of it, because it's large and very absurd. But here's some of the highlights of this. It would reverse common sense reforms that Republicans made in the Working Families Tax Cut that keep illegal aliens off taxpayer-funded health care. This is a fact. Page 57, Section 2141 of their counterproposal, as we've been posting everywhere. And it would, they would add the illegal aliens, non-citizens, back to taxpayer-funded benefits. It would cost taxpayers nearly $200 billion. They would also remove a very reasonable and modest work requirement that we put on able-bodied young men with no dependents. As we've said, they should not be riding the wagon and taking Medicaid. That is intended for vulnerable populations, the elderly, disabled, and young pregnant women, for example, and not young able-bodied men without dependents who are playing video games. We put that into the law because it's common sense. Their counterproposal would reverse that, so taxpayers would be funding them again. They would make in their counterproposal permanent COVID-era Obamacare subsidies without any income caps or any other reforms at all. They would make that permanent. That would cost taxpayers an estimated $358 billion. They would take away the $50 billion that we put into the law to support rural hospitals. They would remove that. And they would send $500 million to liberal news outlets by refunding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It would also restore up to $5 billion of American taxpayer funds for wasteful spending for international projects. Here's a couple of examples. This is in their legislation, their counterproposal on the CR to keep the lights open. This is what they want to do. They want to spend $24.6 million of your hard-earned dollars as a taxpayer for climate resilience in Honduras. They want to spend $13.4 million for civic engagement in Zimbabwe. They want to send $3.9 million for LGBTQI+ democracy grants in the Western Balkans. They want to spend $2.9 million of your dollars for desert locust risk reduction in the Horn of Africa. And $2 million for, quote, organizing for feminist democratic principles in Africa. We are not doing that. These are unserious proposals from unserious people, and they are playing games while real Americans are being harmed adversely by the shutdown.
The American people know that Republicans have shut the government down because of their unwillingness to provide health care to everyday Americans, working class Americans, and middle class Americans. The Republicans have created a health care crisis that is devastating people all across the country. Working class America, rural America, urban America, small town America, the heartland of America, and black and brown communities all throughout America. That Republican healthcare crisis includes, but is not limited to, the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers closing all throughout the country because of what Republicans did in their one big ugly bill. The country faces a possible $536 billion cut to Medicare if Congress doesn't act by the end of this year. The Republicans continue to refuse to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which is going to result in tens of millions of Americans experiencing dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles. All across the country, including, most significantly, in states that Donald Trump won. And Republicans could care less. House Republicans canceled votes 2 weeks ago, canceled votes last week, canceled votes this week. House Republicans are on vacation, House Democrats are on duty here in Washington, D.C., ready to reopen the government, ready to support our troops and hardworking federal civil servants, and ready to address the Republican health care crisis that is crushing people all across the country in an environment where the cost of living is already too high because of failed Republican policies like the Trump tariffs. Everything we're seeing right now in the midst of this Trump Republican shutdown is consistent with their failed policies that haven't made life more affordable for the American people. Republicans continue to make life more expensive. And Democrats are working hard to fix our broken healthcare system because of the crisis Republicans have created and to lower the high cost of living. Kevin, the pain of a government shutdown is being felt by all Americans, and it's unfortunate that Donald Trump and Republicans have decided to shut the government down and then not to do a damn thing to find a bipartisan path forward. Not a thing over the last 2 weeks. I mean, Donald Trump literally has spent more time on the golf course than talking to Democrats. He spent more time creating deepfake videos than talking to Democrats. House Republicans have chosen to cancel votes now for 3 consecutive weeks. This is their behavior. These are facts. No one disputes these things. And as Democrats, Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats who courageously continue to hold the line, partnering with House Democrats, have made clear, we will sit down with anyone, anytime, any place to reopen the government and find a bipartisan path forward. But at the same time, we have to address the healthcare crisis that is breaking hardworking American taxpayers throughout the country. And the American people know it. This is not a manufactured healthcare crisis. It's real. And it's been visited upon the American people by Donald Trump and the Republican Party.
You know, a lot of people say, why have the Democrats continued this charade of shutting down the government and inflicting pain, real pain on millions of families across America? And the Speaker laid it out real clear. Chuck Schumer filed an alternative bill weeks ago of his list of demands, literally a list of demands that he said have to be met before he releases the American people from this torrential pain he's inflicting. And it includes $1.5 trillion of new spending on far-left wish lists. Things like, yes, taxpayer-funded health care for illegals. It's in Chuck Schumer's bill. He guts rural hospitals, all as part of his demand to open up the government. It's not only not serious, it's also destructive. It's something that would actually hurt this country. And why? All so that he can show the radicals and the far left of his party that he's fighting Donald Trump. Everybody knows that's what this is about. Chuck Schumer is scared to death for his political future. He is way more concerned about his political job than he is about the jobs of millions of American families. And it's having a real impact on those families. Today, as has been pointed out, day 14 of the government shutdown that Chuck Schumer imposed on the country, and it is the day where checks would normally be starting to be processed for all of the government workers, many of whom will not get a paycheck because of Chuck Schumer's shutdown. You're already starting to see flight delays, families trying to go visit a relative, maybe go see one of their family members get married, go on a family vacation. They're not able to do that because of Chuck Schumer's shutdown. Our men and women in uniform at risk of losing their pay. And I will credit Donald Trump for a lot of things, but if you look, President Trump has not sat by and just waited for Chuck Schumer to get over his tantrum. President Trump has continued to do his job for the American people. And thank God, because the world is a safer place with President Trump at the helm.
Donald Trump lied when he said that he was going to bring down the cost of groceries. He lied when he said he was going to make life better for all of us, and none of our lives have been better. The only lives that have improved have been the billionaires. The cost of groceries has gone up by about 3% this year. We've seen these tariffs that have caused the cost of goods to go up. And again, these patriots who have awakened, and I have, for example, neighbors who said their entire division was wiped out as of Friday in the Internal Revenue Service. Those who, as Russell Vogt planned, who have felt traumatized as we approach the holiday season. The men and women, thousands of them in the state of Maryland, whose lives have been upended for no reason at all. And not only their lives, but our lives have been upended as well. That we now understand that when you call to get your Social Security check, we don't know whether anyone will be there to answer the phone. The critical services that the American people have come to rely on, predicting hurricanes, ensuring that cancer research goes forward, all of this halted for no reason at all.
Chuck Schumer, if you open the government today, this would end. If the Democrats' shutdown continues, though, more Americans won't see a paycheck at the end of this month. Benefits like SNAP will be put at risk. Airports will be flooded with flight cancellations and delays amid the busiest time to travel all year. And the list goes on and on. Why? Because Chuck Schumer and the Democrats would rather cater to the pro-terrorist wing of their party than to reopen our government. We've said it from this podium, it feels like 1,000,000 times, and we'll say it again. Republicans have done our job. We have a nonpartisan clean CR ready in the Senate to be sent to President Trump's desk immediately, tonight, if they will pass it. We only need 5 Senate Democrats to break ranks with Chuck Schumer, vote for the same CR that they supported just 6 months ago, and reopen the government for the people they were elected to serve. But they have refused to do so 7 times and counting. And each time that they do, hardworking Americans are forced to pay the price. Our message to Senate Democrats today is the same message we've been saying since September 19th. Stop the political games, pass our clean CR, and reopen the government today.
What we say to Donald Trump is, do your job. That's all we're saying. But what else is a federal worker? Federal worker, for the people you see before you today, is a constituent. Someone that we represent, because federal workers are a critical part of the success of America, and they always have been. We represent these people, we represent their families, and Donald Trump, just like you represent the billionaires and Kim Jong-un and Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin, we represent these people, and we are not going to lie down and let you crush the dreams and the work that these people have devoted their lives to.
But the way to end this shutdown is really, really simple. Pass the bipartisan clean funding bill that the House approved weeks ago. The Republicans voted to keep the government open. Call your Democratic senators. They're voting to keep it shut, not us. So when you ask what negotiation, there's nothing to negotiate. We already passed, we said yes, right? Democrats won't do it. They'd rather please their radical base than put America first. Listen, I'm grateful to President Trump for finding a way to keep milk flowing to moms and babies through the WIC and paychecks going to our troops. Yes, I'm happy, but that's not going to last forever. Right? So there again, he's even putting people over politics. I mean, come on.
Mr. President, quote, every day gets better for us, end quote. So said the Democrat leader in an interview published on Thursday, hours before Democrats once again voted to keep the government closed and to deny service members a paycheck. Federal workers, including law enforcement officers, missed part of their pay last Friday. But hey, at least life is getting better for Senate Democrats. Mr. President, a CNN article from Thursday said that Democrats are preparing to keep on with this shutdown for, and I quote, several more weeks. I guess Democrats are not going to be satisfied until military families and government workers are lining up at food banks or visiting payday lenders or simply charging necessary items like milk and bread on their credit cards to be repaid later if they can, along with the big interest charges that come with that. But hey, while military families and government workers may be deeply stressed, at least life is getting better every day for Senate Democrats. Mr. President, I could at least understand a little bit more where Democrats are coming from if Republicans were asking them to swallow a lot of new Republican policies to reopen the government. But Republicans aren't asking Democrats for anything. We're not asking them to support any new Republican policies. We're not asking them to swallow any partisan policy riders. We have put forward, and the House has passed, a clean, nonpartisan CR. That's the bill Democrats are rejecting. And by the way, you certainly don't have to take my word for it that we put forward a clean bill. Here's what one mainstream news publication said last week, and I quote, "It's important to note that Democrats instigated this shutdown. They rejected a clean funding proposal and demanded significant and expensive health care policy changes in exchange for their votes," end quote. It's important to note that Democrats instigated this shutdown. They rejected a clean funding proposal and demanded significant and expensive health care policy changes in exchange for their votes, end quote. Yeah, that pretty much captures it right there in a nutshell, Mr. President. Now, Democrats like to whine that Republicans aren't negotiating, but negotiation, Mr. President, is what you do when each side has a list of demands and you need to meet in the middle. Republicans, as I and a lot of other people have pointed out, haven't put forward any demands. Only Democrats have made demands. And by the way, very expensive demands. And they've taken government funding hostage in an attempt to force through their partisan measures. Mr. President, I remember when Democrats used to care about the effects of a government shutdown. In fact, I could fill a whole speech, many speeches actually, with quotes from Democrats talking about how terrible shutdowns are. I used to think they were sincere in those opinions, but it's become abundantly clear that their previous statements weren't based on principle, but on political advantage. Democrats were against shutdowns when it suited their political purposes, and now that it suits their political purposes, they think, to keep the government closed, now they support shutdowns. I suspect their political calculations are flawed, because after all, 65% of voters think Democrats should reopen the government instead of holding out for their partisan demands. But I guess, Mr. President, Democrats are more worried about gaining the approval of their far-left base than about getting the approval of everyday Americans. Mr. President, it's day 14 of Democrat shutdown. Our economy is losing billions of dollars. Federal workers, including law enforcement officers, are going without pay. Critical government programs are in jeopardy. But hey, at least life is getting better every day for Senate Democrats.
On Argentina, if Americans want to know just how little Donald Trump seems to care about their health care, look at what he's doing today in the Oval Office. As we speak, the administration is approving $20 billion in taxpayer dollars to bail out Argentina in the middle of a shutdown. I have just one question. If this administration has $20 billion to spare for a MAGA-friendly foreign government, how can they say we don't have the money to lower health care costs here at home? The overwhelming majority of Americans say we need help with our health care, and they're busy spending $20 billion because Trump seems to really like the leader of Argentina. They're both sort of MAGA types. The administration is giving this money away to help Argentina's hard-right president in his election, where his party is in serious trouble. It's a bailout, it's nonsensical, and at the same time, the American people are frightened, scared, worried about losing their health care. It makes no sense to give money to Argentina and then say we don't have enough money to help Americans with health care. It is so against what Americans want. I'm sure if we had a vote here in this country, it would be 99-1 almost that the money belongs here, and that's what we should be focused on. Meanwhile, farmers across America are looking at this Argentina bailout on one side and wondering whose side the administration is on. It's been a devastating year for our soybean farmers because this administration has bungled trade talks with Beijing, and as a consequence, they've killed our soybean exports to that country. Now China is looking precisely to Argentina to cut new soybean deals, while our farmers at home suffer backbreaking losses. And on top of all that, you mean to tell me the administration's fine sending $20 billion of taxpayer dollars to help foreign farmers compete against American farmers here at home in the middle of a shutdown? It's insane, utterly insane. This Argentina bailout is a slap in the face to both American farmers and to working families worried about keeping their health care. So I'll say it again. If this administration has $20 billion to spare for a MAGA-friendly foreign government, they cannot turn around and say we don't have the money to lower health care costs here at home, because those costs are going through the roof. On the shutdown, on day 14 of the Trump shutdown, I want to remind everybody why we're here in the first place. Democrats have made it very clear, day in, day out, we want to open the government and have a serious negotiation to fix the health care premium crisis that is set to wallop the American people. Nearly everyone agrees that looming ACA premium hikes is a devastating problem. The public knows it, we Democrats know it, the White House privately knows it, and even many Republicans here in Congress know it. They admit it. And yet, Republicans remain dug in and insist there's nothing to negotiate when it comes to health care, that they won't even sit down and talk with Democrats about it. That makes no sense. That's not the way we always get our CRs done. The Republican leader has now scheduled 7 votes on the Republican partisan CR, and it has failed to secure enough votes to pass this chamber each time. That means, like it or not, the Republican leader needs to work with Democrats in a bipartisan way to reopen the government, just as we did when we passed 13 CRs when I was majority leader. Last week, we saw what happens when Republicans choose to work with Democrats in a serious way. We passed the NDAA with the National Defense Bill, with a strong bipartisan vote. We need the same enthusiasm from Republicans that we saw in the NDA here in the health care issue. And of course, the biggest roadblock right now to reopening the government is the Speaker of the House. The Speaker has now kept Congress on vacation for 3 weeks. It's just incredible. Government workers must work without getting paid. House Republicans get paid without working. Johnson continues to insist there is nothing to negotiate. But I want to make one point very clear. Republican leaders can say all they want, there's nothing to negotiate. But if Republicans don't change course, then very soon 20 million Americans are going to face financial catastrophe when their health care premiums go through the roof. And many more Americans will face it than the 20 million, but 20 million are right on the front lines here because of the ACA. That is reality Republicans can't make disappear by just digging in. The ACA premium crisis is not a fix-it-later issue, but rather a fix-it-now issue, because open enrollment starts in less than a month, and window shopping has already begun in several states where people have the awful choice. Should I go without health care altogether with my family? What if my kid or my spouse or myself gets sick? Or should I cut back on almost everything else because I need to pay huge increases in my health care insurance? So Republicans may think they can dig in until the next ice age, but a fork in the road is coming their way whether they like it or not. Either work with Democrats to fix ACA premiums or sit by as 20 million Americans pay thousands of dollars more out of pocket. If Republicans remain dug in, the American people will hold them responsible for rising health care costs. If Republicans do nothing, then they will be the ones triggering a massive health care panic that will be felt from coast to coast. This is a non-negotiable fact. Democrats want to avoid reaching that point. We want to work in a serious way with our Republican colleagues and with President Trump to defuse this health care crisis before it starts. But we're running out of time.